before we even go to his word, I want to share with you, it's not even on the screen or anything, but the Lord reminded me of this passage in Acts chapter 5. It is the moment, it is the first moment that we see in the New Testament in the church after resurrection, after the day of Pentecost, Acts chapter 2, when the disciples received the Holy Spirit, after they began to speak and preach and share about Jesus, and there was miracles that followed all of that as they saw one miracle after another, and now 5,000, 10,000 new converts, new people started coming to Jesus. As all of this was happening, of course, Satan's little head always comes and tries to attack and tries to bring division and tries to bring lies into what God is doing. The first time I ever preached from this passage, I called this the new Eden, the new Garden of Eden, the new Adam and Eve, because everything was good there in Genesis chapter 1, 2. Everything's going well, but then by chapter 3 of Genesis, Satan's little snake head comes out and starts to tempt Eve and tempt Adam, and they fall to the sin of their mistakes and the lies of the enemy. And after that, we went downhill from that. But then here in Acts chapter 5, here everything's going well. They're in the presence of God. They're praying, they're worshiping. But then in Acts chapter 5, verse 3, I'll start. Then Peter said to this man named Ananias, "How is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and have kept yourself some of the money you received from the land?" I'm laughing because this has nothing to do with money. But what it does have to do with lies. They had this money that they sold this land, and they were trying to impress the disciples. They're trying to impress Peter, and they're trying to impress God. And they said, "We're going to sell this land, and we're going to give all of our land to the church." And they wanted, they kind of puffed themselves up with that, and everybody was going, "Wow, good for you, Ananias. Good for you, Sapphira, his wife. Wow, that's amazing." While they're doing all of this, all of a sudden, they said, "Well, actually, hey, babe, come over here. Let's tell them that we're going to give the whole amount, but let's actually keep half. They won't even know. They don't know how much the land costs. Let's just keep half." So they kept half, and that's where Peter calls him out. He says, "How does Satan fill your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and that you kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land?" Did they actually give the other half? Yes. Could they have just done that in the first place? Absolutely. But they wanted to lie just to try to pride themselves in what they were doing. And verse 4, "Didn't it belong to you before it was sold," says Peter? "And after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing?" It's thinking, Peter's going, "That was kind of dumb of you guys. You have not lied just to human beings, but you've lied to God." Verse 5, "When Ananias heard this, he fell down and died." When he heard this, he fell down and died. Now, some of you might imagine the power of God at the moment, just boom, just getting him. He dies in the place. There are moments in the Old Testament over and over where we see as soon as someone sinned against God, that the earth would open up and swallow them whole. I mean, these kind of stories that we see in the Old Testament, you might say, well, that didn't actually happen, and that really was just an allegory or symbolism or metaphor of some kind of truth, but it didn't actually happen. Well, when you start thinking that, then you start thinking, well, maybe the parting of the Red Sea didn't actually happen. Maybe all of these other miracles, Jesus walking on the ocean, on the water, maybe that didn't actually happen. Maybe him resurrecting from the dead, maybe that didn't actually happen. So you got to be careful when you start removing some parts and calling them just simple symbols or metaphors. And so we believe that those moments actually happened. That when people came to God in their sin and they lied to God and they came with any other motive to God, that they would die in that moment. Now, some of us still have this idea of that type of God. He is that same God. He never changed, but he gave us his son named Jesus. That Jesus gave his life so that we wouldn't have to die. That he gave us by grace, not by anything that we deserve. He gave us the gift of life so that he would die in our place, so that in those moments of us sinning, in those moments of us even coming into the presence of God, coming into this house and coming in and worshiping him, you don't die. You're able to come in peace and in freedom into the presence of God, knowing that he is going to simply receive you, because he doesn't see you and your sin. He sees the blood of his own son covering you, so that he receives his son And he receives us now as adopted sons and daughters. And he receives us, and we are blessed in his presence. And so we don't have to fear this way, but doesn't mean that God hasn't changed. Now, some of you might imagine Ananias is simply, boom, dying there at the moment. Maybe, if you want to get technical about it, maybe he had such high blood pressure at the moment that he was so fearful and recognized what he had done that at that moment, because of his anxiety, he had an anxiety attack, that he had high blood pressure and he had a bad heart. And all of a sudden at that moment, that was the moment that killed him. So if you want to get technical and scientific, that there is no doubt that couldn't have happened also. But a great fear, it says, seized all who heard what had happened. Obviously, if you see someone die like that, all of a sudden after they had lied, of course that you're going to stop and pause and be fearful. Then some young men came forward, wrapped up his body, and carried him out and buried him. I love this because sometimes the younger generation, before they've been all messed up with all the lies of not only the enemy, but of society and even church culture, the young people are the ones that have to get up and say, wait, no, that's not what it says here. And the young people have to sometimes correct even the older ones that have been filled with so much apathy and religion that they get lost in all that. And the young man came, and they were the ones that had to bury the body and carried him out. And in verse 7, about 3 hours later, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. And Peter asked, tell me, is this the price you and Ananias got for the land? Peter was just kind of messing with her. Peter was kind of just checking, are you actually going to tell the truth? And she says, yeah. She said, that is the price. Peter said to her, how could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they're going to carry you out also. At that moment, she fell down at his feet, and she died. Then the young men came in, finding her dead, carried her out, and buried her beside her husband. Great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about these events. This is a story in the New Testament. There's a lot of people that even in our churches today that say, well, yeah, that's an Old Testament story. We don't really believe that anymore. No. This isn't the New Testament. This is after Jesus. This is AD. This is after resurrection. This is through the disciples. This is through Peter. This is just a Christian, his wife, and himself dying because of the lies that they had brought to God, their sin, their deceitfulness. And so all of this is happening. And in our world today, we need to recognize that this fear is something that we not only need to ignore, a fear of just being scared of living, fearful of what things are happening in our life, but also having a godly fear. It's a little bit strange that we don't have to have fear, but we have to have a godly fear, a reverence, a respect to the God that can make this happen, that allows this to happen. Actually, I would say that biblically, that death does not come from God. That was never his will, even for Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve would have still been alive to this day. It was the sin that they surrendered themselves to and said, we don't want to follow this life-giving God. We want to follow ourselves. We want to follow whatever this little snake is telling us to do because he's promising us so much. We're going to follow this. At that moment, they lost that life, and now they had to experience death. Their own sons had to experience murder because of sin. And so he does not cause death. He does not cause death. He does not cause the earthquakes and the hurricanes and the tornadoes. He does not cause the cancer. He does not cause these things. Let's be very clear with this. It is the sin of this earth and the nature of this earth and the things that we do to this earth that cause these things. Okay, I'm not talking about global warming, and don't get, I don't want to get canceled by you or any of that. I'm not talking about this or that. I'm talking about just the simple idea and understanding that we have been given to take care of this earth. And so, yeah, you start driving so many cars, you start doing all of this, all of a sudden it's 100 degrees on the first Sunday of October. It's just that basic. Also, we have to think about, oh no, I've smoked all my life and now I got lung cancer. Why would God give me this lung cancer? It's not just simply, it's not at all God. But does he allow it? Yes. In his sovereignty, as Billy Graham said when they were asking him, why does he allow these bad things to happen? Billy Graham said, and I'll just simply quote him, he said, that's way above my pay grade. He said, I don't really know why. I've asked God, I've thought about this. Why would he allow it? But what I do know is that when we go through those things, as I shared many times before, when we go through these sicknesses and problems and earthquakes, being literal or spiritual in our life, we sure do run back to God in those moments. And so in those moments, God may simply allow it to simply get us closer to him, because that is his purpose after all. That is his purpose, not for us to just live in a life without earthquakes and problems, but he simply allows these things so that our purpose in life is to get closer, know him more, be more intimate with him in everything we do. And so this morning, again, fear is a very negative thing. People see fear as something to avoid, but in the Bible, the fear of the Lord is seen as something holy, as something foundational. The fear of God is not just simply this terror that pushes us away from him, but a reverence that should draw us closer to him. It is a deep awe and respect of God's power, of his majesty, of his holiness, perfection, beauty, goodness, that serves as the very foundation of true worship. Now, fear builds worship in us. This morning, one of the things that God continues to put on my heart is that we get too comfortable. We get too comfortable in our Christianity. We get too comfortable in our church. We get too comfortable in just checking in and checking out, showing up to church, doing the motions, and then leaving, and then just being just complainers throughout the week. Why am I not experiencing God? Why am I not living the life that I know I should be living? Why is it being so difficult for me to simply obey God? It's because we get complacent, we get comfortable, we just simply allow God to be in our life, maybe for 2 hours on a Sunday morning, if that, because we just like the ritual, the religion, and we set it aside in a nice little box so that we can live our life the rest of the week. But we need to start being people who know how to worship, what it means to worship. I do not want, as a pastor, a church filled with people that are so filled with understanding of the word, and we simply become arrogant, just obnoxious Christians that like to attack others with the word and say, that's not how you do it. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's not what that actually means. No. When we are people who also worship, that know his word, and because we know truly his word and the characteristic of who God is, his personality, the very character of God should lead us to a deeper, crazy, in the 90s, there was this book called Jesus Freaks, that we must be these freaks and crazy and weird to the world, because we get to be in the presence of the creator of the universe, and we get to worship him, and we look weird and we look different and we look uncomfortable, but we are doing all of this and we're getting closer and closer to God. Last year, or now it's almost been 2 years since the beginning of 2023, when many of you started being part of this regularly. And as I've thought about this, one of the main things that started happening at the time, part of that revival that was happening here at the Word Church, is that people started to experience their first love. They started coming to this altar, and I wouldn't have to even say anything. I wouldn't have to say, okay, put your hands up. Okay, lift your voices up. Okay, come and kneel at his presence. No, it was just naturally happening out of surrender, out of need, out of a desire to have something new and something real in your life. And so people were doing this, and it was beautiful, and it was affecting my spiritual life and us as a church, and we were being encouraged, and it was moving and all of this. All of a sudden, no wonder Jesus tells the church of Ephesus in Revelation chapter 3, he tells them, you have lost your first love. You're doing all of these things. You're helping at the church. You're doing all of these different outreaches, and you're helping with this and that, and you're setting up the communion table and setting up coffee and helping with the tables and chairs, and we're doing youth group, and we're doing men's camps and youth conferences and women's conferences, and we're doing all of these things. But at the end of it all, he says, you have lost your first love. Let us not get caught up in ministry and the works and the things that we need to do, and we forget about our first love. That deep, just, I can't wait. I want to be closer and closer to God. Maybe some of you haven't experienced that just yet, but that's why for 8 weeks we talked about the glory of God, so that we could acknowledge His glory, His power, His greatness. But again, it's not just so that we could be like, wow. But it's so that we could say, wow, I want more of Him. I want to get closer to Him. The more I recognize who He is and who He actually is, that He is not just there so that He does whatever I want Him to do. Again, come on Wednesday night, you'll realize that that's more New Age than it is Christianity, than it is good news gospel. That we somehow use God just so that He can make me happy and fulfill my vision board and fulfill what I want from life. But that I need a God that is just greater than I could ever imagine. But that He opens up His arms of love towards us, and He says, don't fear, my son. Don't fear, my daughter. Come right into my presence. And He builds us up. And so the more we have a true, deep understanding of who God really is, I think that we started to think of Jesus as this cute little, just this. You see it from the shirts that say, Jesus is my homeboy. I remember that was a big one. You would go anywhere in the mall, you would find those shirts, to the little thing that you put on your dashboard in your car, to the little Jesus that you might just carry around on your neck as a superstition, to whatever else that you might think of Jesus just as, the nice guy on the Chosen show. That you're just thinking of, He is just this sweet. Yes, He is. He is a sweet God. He is a loving God. He is a God that gives us grace. He is a God that carries us and lifts us up. But He is not a God. He is not a God that turns His eye from your sin. He is not a God that ignores our sin because He loves us anyway. No, absolutely not. He is still the judge, the great and good judge. He is a God of wrath that hates sin and will attack sin and will allow anything to come against sin and the plans of the enemy. He hates it. And that is why He wants to do everything possible to keep us away from it, to protect us, to give us life, to give us obedience. He wants us to obey Him, not because He cares about us just living as Christian robots and bored and having all of this fear of missing out for everything that we have, but that we're able to have this life of sons and daughters that obey out of joy and out of gratitude because He is so awesome. That He cannot be placed simply in my pocket or simply in my own opinion of who God is, but that He is the amazing God of the universe, that He is powerful, almighty, all good and powerful, that nothing and nobody could try to describe Him completely. He is this God. When we have a huge understanding of who God is, that should put a little bit of fear in your hearts. That should help you acknowledge that there is more to all of this than us just simply going to a church and expecting Him to just simply do it the way that we want Him to do it, but that we're able to live submitted to Him so that when we do have a need, it just flows out in a praise and a worship and saying, God, you know the need already. I know you do. But because you're awesome and powerful, all-knowing, ever-present, that you're everywhere at all times, that I know that you know what's happening right now in my life. But you know what, God, because I know who you are, I'm going to be able to go through this. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to doubt. I'm not going to be depressed. I'm not going to fall apart because I know who you are. And you are all powerful, and I've served you, and I've obeyed you. And now that I'm going through this storm, I'm still going to, because you are still worthy of all this. Now, again, many people live in fear, whether it's fear of the unknown, fear of circumstances, fear of spiritual darkness. If you are a Christian, that at this time you can't wait to start posting your anti-Halloween stuff. You can't wait to start telling your neighbors and your family members that, oh, you're going to hell if you celebrate Halloween. If you are a Christian, that you are scared walking by the house with the skeletons in front of their yard and with the jack-o'-lanterns outside of the yard, or you're scared of walking through Walmart with all the Halloween decorations, and you're scared because, oh, no, get the kids away because the demons are going to come and attack us. All that is plastic, all of that is garbage, all of that is just some old nasty pumpkins that in 100-degree weather are falling apart already. It has nothing to do with an actual devil that wants to steal, kill, and destroy your life. And so while we as the church are so lost in all this superstition and scared about all this stuff, am I telling you to be part of that? Absolutely not. How silly, how ridiculous to spend money on all of that garbage. How ridiculous to go and say that you're going to go talk to your dead loved ones. How ridiculous and silly it is to go and celebrate death when we have a God that tells us to celebrate life. Life. Can we go honor our loved ones? Absolutely. Can you go put some flowers and loved ones at the loved one cemetery? Absolutely. But go eat your own food, go do your own thing. You don't have to go do all of this other stuff. And does it go against our culture? Does it go against our traditions? Does it go against some of the things? Are you going to be the weird one, the different one? Yes, but also don't be the obnoxious one that's saying, oh, all of you are wrong. No. Pray for your family. Pray for your friends. Just be the light in the midst of all the darkness. And stop simply living in fear, living in this spiritual fear that the devil is constantly going to just somehow attack you at all moments. That is, especially during the season, you're scared about darkness and all these spooky things that are highlighted. Our call as believers is to have a healthy fear, not of Satan, not of darkness, but of the Lord. This kind of fear is paralyzing. This kind of fear should also just keep us on this understanding that we cannot go on without God, that we truly need him. And I don't want to do anything to lose that. It's not that I want to live a holy life so that God doesn't punish me. Imagine I don't want to cheat on my wife so that she doesn't leave me. How sad is that? What kind of relationship is that? I don't want to disobey God because I don't want to lose him. I don't want to lose everything that he is to me. I don't want to lose my relationship with him. I want to be so close to him and obey him and live for him that it's just taking me deeper and deeper into a relationship with him that I had never had an idea before any of this. If this is your first time hearing anything like this, I'm telling you, there is so much joy, there is so much peace, there is so much freedom in living this way. If you are hearing this for here comes another Halloween message, or here comes another October message. No. If you are still living in this fear of just, oh no, God's going to punish me. Oh no, God's going to just simply I don't want to go to hell. Don't serve God because you don't want to go to hell. Serve God because he is good. Give your life to Jesus, not because you're scared of the fires. Oh, give your life to Jesus because you want to burn stronger for him now. Because you want more of him now. Because you want to get closer. And that gives you a life that you never imagined before. But again, throughout the Bible, here's some scriptures that remind us of the importance of fearing God. It says in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. And now Israel, what does the Lord your God ask of you, but to fear the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to love him, to serve the Lord with your God, with all your heart and with all your soul. This is Bible. This is not religion. This is not traditions. This is not just simply your opinion. This is Bible. This is what God tells us to do. Fear the Lord your God. When we fear God, we are compelled to love him fully and walk in his ways. And this brings us closer to him in worship and prayer. I want us to get so deep in the understanding of what worship and prayer truly is and what it does. The reason why we don't pray and the reason why we don't get into a deeper, real worship. Now, I'm not talking about songs. I'm not just talking about he is who he says I am. It's not just about the song. It's not just about us coming to a church building and singing back at the screens or at the musicians. It's about us. The reason why we don't pray and the reason why we don't get deeper into this is because we don't recognize who God truly is. We don't understand the Lord of who he actually is. It says in Psalm 111, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You want wisdom? You want to be guided by the truth? You fear the Lord. It begins with a reverence to God. This fear, this awe, guides our understanding and leads us into a worship that is more than ritual. It becomes heartfelt, wise response to the greatness of God. In Ecclesiastes chapter 12, it says, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. What is the will of God? There we go again. We don't know it because we don't read it. In Ecclesiastes, it says, fearing God, keep his commandments. Fear God, keep his commandments. I don't know what to do, Pastor. I just don't know where to do. Should I go left? Should I go right? Fear God, keep his commandments. That should answer that for you. I don't know. Should I marry her or not, Pastor? I don't know what to do. Fear God, keep his commandments. Because you know, whatever decision you make, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a move to another city, if it does not allow you, or if because you are fearing God, if you are going against God and his will and his commands, then you simply know that you're making the wrong decision. It's that simple. Fear God, follow his commandments. In Isaiah chapter 8, verse 13, the Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. He is the one you are to fear. Who is the one we are to fear? God. Not no devil, not the person, not Kamala, not Trump, not some other politician, not some other nation, not whatever new terrorist group is strong at the moment. People are living in fear because they're listening to the not the gospel, but to the message of whatever news station or social media or whatever you're allowing into your eyes and into your ears. And you are more busy worshiping and fearing those things, which turns into worship of those things and those people. If for some of you, if Trump stood up here right now, you would just, I would see a worshiper in you that I would never see before. That you were just Donnie, Don, President Trump, kissing his feet or whatever. Some of you, you see some whatever other celebrity, the reason why. Just think about it. In the Bible, in the heavens, there's these moments, especially in the book of Revelation, that gives us a little glimpse of what heaven looks like. And Jesus, God Almighty, sits on his throne. And on his throne, on this stage, it is surrounded by angels, and it's surrounded by others who have given their life to the Lord, who have martyred for him, who have been killed because of the gospel and the message of Jesus. And the Bible shows us that this is a glimpse of heaven, how we will be shouting, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, how we will be worshiping him day and night and day. And it is this beautiful scene of Jesus sitting on his throne on this stage, and people and from all different age groups and nations and races, and everyone coming together in unison and worshiping the Lord. It's no wonder that Lucifer, Satan in heaven, that this angel loved, he was in charge, he was responsible for the music that was happening at that altar, that was happening at that worship of God. And this Lucifer, he recognized what the angels were doing, that they were worshiping and honoring God. And he became such a good choir director that he thought, you know what? Stop looking at him, look at me. That this angel, even in heaven, we don't have time to go into details of why would God allow all these things in heaven to be happening, envy and all of this. But this angel, he started feeling envious of God and told the angels, now worship me. Of course, the same God there, the same God now. He said, no, I won't have any of that. You, Lucifer, are out of here, are kicked out of heaven, and take your little angels with you that have also decided to worship you. That angel becomes Satan and his demons. Now, God creates this hell, not for you, not for us. He creates a hell because, again, why would God allow why would he create a hell if he is such a good God? No, he didn't create it for you. He created for Satan and his demons. That's what he created that hell for. But what Satan and his demons want to do is not be there by themselves. So what does he do? He goes and attacks and influences us and tempts us to want to be his followers so that we could go to those places. But it's not a coincidence that his tactic hasn't changed. Isn't it interesting that there are stages all over the world, whether it is a singer, whether it is a concert, you want to see some real worship. There are people that go to these concerts and sleep there to go and be there and stay there. They show up days earlier. Oh, service starts at 10. I can't make it at 10 a.m., Pastor. But they go for hours and days before just to make sure they get front row to get closer to this person who they are worshiping. This singer, this celebrity, this group, this band that you're spending money. Again, what do you spend your money on, your resources, your time, your attention, and your thoughts on? All of those things are, what is it you're worshiping? So again, we say, well, we don't worship an idol. We don't worship a golden calf. But we sure do worship these people, these things, and switch it up from a band or a group or a singer to a politician, to a rally. Oh, you see some beautiful worshipers at those rallies. Oh, make America great again, and this and that, and all the rally, and all, this is our Messiah, Trump, this is our, and all of this garbage being said. And then on the other side, they say the same thing about Kamala. And all of this stuff, they're worshiping people. They're worshiping things because Satan could care less if you become a Satan worshiper or not. It's not about that. Satan wants us to stop being a worshiper of God, to stop fearing God, and to start loving this world, and to settle for the things of this world, and to spend our time, our money, our energy, our focus on this world, rather than us understanding that we are not meant for this world, that this is not our citizenship, that we have been given a new citizenship in a new kingdom, that there is a different way of living now, that we don't act the same like everyone else, that we have been chosen, that we have been purified, that we have been cleansed to become a new believer, a new man, a new woman, that we have been given a new life, not like the old. So there has to be a moment of us separating. But the problem is that because we don't recognize how awesome and how good God really is, when you have a small idea of who God really is, when you have this little religious, little cutesy, little demure idea of who God is, he's just this small little superstition. No wonder you go find that worship in other things and other people. No wonder you try to go find that needs to be filled in your heart with things, with people, with addictions, with other stuff. Because that little idea of who you have of God is not enough. So ask God this day. Ask God this week. Oh, ask Him, Lord, I want to be able to truly recognize you. I want you to show me your glory. Keep praying that. Keep asking for that. It says in Psalm 34, verse 9, fear the Lord, you, his holy people. You say, well, I'm not holy. He's made you holy. Receive it. It's done. It's it. He's made you holy. If you don't like it, then leave, and you're no longer a Christian. Stop calling yourself a Christian because you're not holy. But if you are, He's made you holy. So receive that. So you're no longer just a sinner. You're now been made holy. There is a good, beautiful responsibility to that now. That's why the same psalmist, the same King David says, enjoy the beauty of His holiness. It's not something religious that we're just like, oh, holy, how boring, holy, how boring is that? No, it's a beautiful thing. I'm telling you, there is so much. You think that it's just going to church and giving an offering and singing the songs and reading a Bible study once in a while. No, this is you're changing your point of view. You're changing the way. This is radical change. This is a change of your mind so that you are able to see this world not the same that you saw it before, and you don't see God the same that you saw Him before. And He says, fear Him. Those who fear Him lack nothing. The lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no thing. Come, my children, listen to me. I will teach you to fear the Lord. Number one, fear of God establishes wisdom for worship. Again, why do we need wisdom? The men of the church that are meeting on Tuesday nights, we're reading the book of Proverbs, just one chapter at a time, and we're barely in chapter 4, but already we've recognized that without wisdom, there is no life. That you need wisdom to be able to live. And that the writer of Proverbs was King Solomon. King Solomon did something beautiful, but at the same time, he made a mistake. When God says, I will bless you with whatever you want. You have honored me, Solomon. You have honored me with your life. You have built this beautiful temple. I receive it. I will fill it with my glory. Now I will bless you with whatever you ask me for. And Solomon, in his goodness, he says, God, I don't ask for silver or gold. I'm asking you for wisdom to be able to lead your people. And God says, wow, because you didn't ask me for the silver and gold, I'll go ahead and give you the silver and gold, but I'll give you the wisdom to lead my people. The problem was that he should have asked, I'm asking for wisdom to lead your people, but also to lead my own life. The problem with Solomon is that we know, if you just read a little bit of history in the Old Testament, is that he had 1,000 wives. He had all these other women, prostitutes, and all these other things. Now, would you call that wise? Absolutely not. Anybody that has one wife knows that one wife is more than enough. And so you don't need 1,000. And so he started making all these mistakes. He was affected by it. He didn't live to the full potential that he had because he was lost in all this sin. But he was a wonderful king. He was a great leader. And the kingdom of Israel grew like never before under his leadership. But for us as Christians now, as individuals, we're asking God to give us wisdom to understand who he is. So again, you're asking God, show me your glory, but give me the wisdom for my eyes, my heart, my mind to understand your glory, to receive your glory, to live not for my own ways, but to understand that, no, your glory means something greater for me personally. It says again in verse 9, fear the Lord, you his holy people, for those who fear will lack nothing. It says in Psalm 23, one of the most known scriptures. I opened yesterday at the rest home with this passage because it says in Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. In the same way, he's saying if we fear him, we will lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He's protecting you. He's helping you rest. He's giving you peace. You stop living with this anxiety, constant anxiety and worry about trying to look good to other people and trying to make other people happy and all of this stuff that plagues us. It's not COVID. It's these kind of sicknesses, these kind of viruses of us always trying to feel like we need to do something and perform for someone else. And he's saying, shh. You lack nothing. I'm your shepherd. You're my sheep. He makes you lie down in green pastures, leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for his name's sake. And verse 4, when you know this and you've experienced his peace and you know who your shepherd is, even though I walk through the darkest valley, even though I may walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Even though you may walk through a place or with people that are around you are so anti-Christ that they have no shame about it anymore, it's okay because you will fear no evil. For God is with you, your rod and your staff. It will comfort me, Lord. When we're able to have that understanding, wisdom, it takes wisdom. There is so much lack of wisdom within church culture today, within Christians, within the way that we attack the world for being secular and for being worldly and for being sinners. Obviously, that's such a lack of wisdom. Wisdom is saying, here, I am going to be light to you. I will bring the difference that Jesus can only make in your life. I'm the one that's going to live differently with wisdom, with a fear of who God is in my life, and I will be the example towards you. In today's world, many people are in a constant state of need, whether that be peace or resources or direction, but those who fear the Lord, that they're not living for themselves, but they're living in this holy reverence and honor of God in everything they do. There is a promise of provision. God takes care of his people when they put him first, aligning their lives for his will. Because now you're not living wastefully. You're not spending your money on garbage. You're not spending your money on just whatever feels good. You're living now with this wisdom that it's all his, but he allows me to live with this. And so he gives me this money for me to administer it, take care of it with wisdom. And so this should encourage us to place our trust in God and worship him with confidence, knowing that he will meet our needs. You have heard of the famous quote from President FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, during World War II. And he said this, just imagine, in the middle of World War II, he gives one of the greatest speeches of all time. As soon as the Japanese airplanes started attacking Pearl Harbor, he gives this on the radio to all the Americans, and he says, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. That's a good quote, that we don't have to fear, but just fear itself. But kind of that kind of makes me be scared now of being scared. Now I'm scared of being scared. But he actually stole this quote from the preacher, Pastor Charles Spurgeon. He said this, he who fears God has nothing else to fear. If you fear God, you should not be scared of anything. Oh, but Pastor, the devil doesn't leave me alone. Stop being scared and giving him glory. Stop worshiping the devil. Stop giving your attention to Satan. Some of the greatest Christians are also some of the greatest devil worshipers, because you give so much attention to the enemy, so much attention to every single demon. I've shared this with you before. When you come to me and you ask me, oh, I can't sleep, I can't do this, I feel like there's ghosts in my house and I'm doing all this. You know what makes me sleep well? Having fear of the Lord. If God is for us, who can be against us? If he is in this house right now and his presence is here and it's surrounded by his angels, oh, just try, enemy. Just try your little whatever Caspers that want to come in, that whatever thing that you want to bring to try to make me feel some kind of fear or distraction, or trying to fear, and you're trying to show me some dead grandma now here at my house walking around. Whatever, devil. My grandma is in heaven right now, praising and worshiping the Lord. You try to distract me with these kind of things and these kind of noises in the middle of the night. The devil knows what you're scared of. The devil knows what you're fearful of. The devil knows what makes you worry. The devil knows what he's going to do to try to do in your life, because you live in constant fear of that specific thing. And so he'll put all these different things in your life that are going to tempt you from it. The devil knows how cheap you are. The devil knows how scared you are of losing that money. And so he'll do all these things in your life to try to tempt you to not trust in God, even with your finances, or trust in God with your relationship. The devil knows how much of a toxic girlfriend or wife you are, that you're just scared about, oh no, he's going to leave me as soon as he texts a woman, or he goes and does this, or he goes there. Oh, he's going to leave me. No, you can't go to men's camp because, oh, who knows who's going to be over there, and if there's a woman over there. It is a constant fear of losing your marriage or losing your kids. Oh no, I can't trust my kids. They can't go here or there. They got to stay in this Christian little bubble at all times. And you got to say, no, God, they are yours, and I'm going to trust in you. My husband, my wife, my marriage, my family, it's in your hands, God, and I'm going to trust in you. I have nothing to fear, because if I have this fear of God, I know who he is, how powerful he is, how much in control he is. He is sovereign. In Hebrews chapter 13, because Spurgeon stole it from the author of Hebrews, so we may say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? Whew. Stop giving all the attention to all the things around you and all the people. You know, if you have trouble, if you're young and you've got problems with bullies at school, or teachers, or this or that, or you maybe you're older and you still got bullies at work, or whatever it is. Whatever. No mere mortal can do anything to me, because he is my helper. He is the one that walks with me through the valley of the shadow of death. That you're able to walk through the darkest place. That you're able to walk right there down whatever part of Stockton, the darkest place of Stockton, and you have no fear, and you're able to stand and have courage and boldness to say, I will go to these places in the name of Jesus, and he's going to use me, and I don't care whatever comes against me because I know who is with me. You know, it says I want to share with you some of these playlists that sometimes people ask, what's the name of this song or that song? Where do you recommend to listen to? You know, some of the songs we sing on Sunday morning, they're newer, they're different. I love the old songs, the old hymns. I obviously grew up with all of that. Those are important. What happened, though, is that there was a transition around the 80s and early 90s, a transition from songs being about God, which is important, which is one of the reasons why we're here right now, about God, and singing songs like "Great is Thy Faithfulness," or "The Greatness of God," or "Blessed Assurance," or you're singing about the things that He's done. Compared to, there was a transition now of what people started calling praise and worship. That now you're singing to God and you're saying, thank you, God. I'm grateful, God. I worship you. Worthy are you, God. So now it is a direct worship to God. And so there was a transition of that. And then in the early 2000s, there was another transition of not simply singing songs. Okay, this song ends. All right, now on to the next one. All right, this song ends. Now on to the next one. There was, again, these young people that started leading different worship, that they saw how it became so monotonous and became so traditional and boring, and just song after the next song. And if you've been to any traditional church, we would open up the hymnal, and everybody had a hymnal in front of your pew there, and you would pull out the pew, and then we would say, all right, turn to page number 52. And then we would turn to 52, and then we would sing that song together. And then someone would say, no, I want number 100. And then someone else would read number 100. We would sing that song, and then they would argue about what song we're supposed to sing. And one of the reasons why we stopped doing that. And so these songs now, in the early 2000s, has switched from simply singing along to becoming songs of prayer, songs that were declaring something as you prayed. And so these songs that we sing on Sunday morning, you're not just singing about God, but it's singing about God, about how great He is and His promises. But then they're also leading us to then pray. And sometimes it might seem repetitive, but sometimes we need to pray that over and over so that you're really getting into the understanding and wisdom that God wants to give to you. So there is wisdom in singing songs like Jireh from Maverick City. And one of the lyrics in it says, I'm already loved. I'm already chosen. I know who I am. I know what you've spoken. When you sing that, it's not just you sitting there in your chair and just singing along. I know what you've loved. I know what you've chosen. You are singing it, but you're saying it as a prayer of saying, I don't even believe this yet, God. But God, this is what your word is saying to me. And so I am receiving this, and I am transforming my mind even as the songs are happening. And as you do that, something sparks inside of you that you say it again, and you say, well, yeah, I'm already loved. I'm already chosen. I am who I am. And Jireh, you are the provider. You are the one that's going to help me and provide for me and take care of me. Yes, God. And as you do that, you're not just singing along. You're not just ignoring the songs. You're not just sitting there and waiting for whatever next thing is happening. You are getting into what we would say, get into worship. You're into this time of prayer. You're now seeking the Lord more. The one complaint I bring to God is saying, God, your people at the Word Church don't know how to pray. They don't like to pray. They don't like to worship. The reason why they don't worship is because they don't like to pray. They like to simply pray a quick 3-minute prayer. They like to pray along with Sister Anita or with Pastor Sergio. But whenever it's time to pray. Whenever it's time to really get deeper and closer, and when we push through, that's why Pastor Coel said earlier, Lord, let there be breakthrough. Breakthrough just means you push through all the discomfort and the awkwardness. You push through whatever distraction is making you think about whatever's happening. You're asking for breakthrough so that you're able to finally break through all of that and say, Lord, I love you. I worship you. I exalt you. I need you. I want more. I want to get closer. And you're not just an observer. You're not just waiting for someone else. Someone that simply does that. Someone that's sitting, I expect that maybe from a 10-year-old that sits in here. And maybe they're just sitting because they haven't met the personal Jesus just yet. Whoever they're listening to on their Spotify, that's their God. whatever YouTube influencer they want to be, that's their God. Whatever video game keeps them up till 9 in the morning, that's why they're sleepy here in church, is that's become their God. And so what we're trying to do as adults, what we're trying to do as parents, is being the example. That we're asking God, give me wisdom to really understand this so that I'm the example. And so when you see your 10-year-old, when you see your 4-year-old or your 2-year-old, you say, God is here. His presence is here. Listen, Jesus is here. Jesus, don't get in the way, because Jesus is here right now, and you need to not, God loves us and we need to worship Him and sing to Him. So just focus. I've seen it. A 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, they could do that. And so we need to be able to be the example that does this. But you're not just telling them, you're the example. You're the one that's doing it. Again, the reason why they might not do it is because they don't see mommy and daddy doing it. And it's so different and it's so weird. And the reason why sometimes your teenager might not do it is because they see mommy and daddy doing the complete opposite during the week. And then you just look like a hypocrite in front of them on a Sunday morning. And so when they're able to see that this is the kind of person that you're becoming a good example to them, and they want it too. They desire this. All this takes wisdom. All of this takes wisdom to be the one that's going to be different. That's not going to simply be like everyone else and just kind of sit back and wait. You're going to be the different one sometimes. You're going to be the one that looks a little bit strange sometimes. That's why I love that Sister Maria sits up here, because at least I get a good amen sometimes, and she'll just start worshiping. She could care less. There was a young man in our youth group that he was about 17 years old when we were there in Tucson in our church, Michael, and he would just run to the altar. As soon as the first song, he would run to the altar, and he would, during the fast songs, he'd be jumping up and down, and during the slow songs, yes, God, yes, and he would just fall on the ground and just worship Him. He would be covered in snot and tears and just yes. And of course, a 17-year-old doing this, everybody else is going, why is he being so weird? Why is he so extra? And nowadays, I would say, oh, he's just a pick-me. He's just trying to show off. Why is he trying to be, you don't need to do all that. I just talk to God by myself. I don't need all that. And one time he got up in front of everybody, and the pastor let him testify. And he said, I know that I look kind of different and kind of weird, and I just give my whole life to Him, even in worship, even through songs, and I just enjoy the worship and the songs. And he had a book of the big thick of CDs. Remember the book of CDs? And he had the whole thing just full with all these worship bands and groups. And he said, I used to listen to the grossest stuff and just the worst stuff. And so he's like, I threw all those away. And now my constant life is this, so that when I come to church in front of everybody else, this is just an overflow of all that God has been feeding me all during the week. And then I come to church and I just want more. But he said, some of you you might think that that's too extra. He says, you don't know what it was. We didn't meet him yet, because when he was younger, when he was about 15 years old, that his mom had cancer. And he says, you don't remember us praying and crying in the hospital room as my mom was dying. And we were crying and we were saying, Jesus, heal my mom. And when she started to get healed, and when she started to now have no more cancer-free completely, that made me want to worship Him even more. And so I don't care what other people say. I don't care if I look weird. I don't care if you say that I'm being extra. I don't care, because they're not the ones that healed my mom. They're not the ones that did this for us. And I will worship Him with all our heart and with all our soul, because he got to meet the true and living God. He has a fear of that God, an honor towards that God. Again, in Proverbs chapter 9, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Number 2, fear of God not only brings wisdom, but it brings humility. We need humility. Reverence for God humbles us. It makes us realize our need for His mercy and His grace. If you only have an idea of a God that's there to bless me, bless me, bless me, or a God that just looks the other way when I'm in sin, that He's just going to love me anyway and take care of us in any way, it doesn't matter, then you will have no humility. There is so much spiritual pride in you as you stand before God. And you're thinking that if I sing louder, somehow that's going to impress Him. He could care less of how loud you get. He wants you to truly know him and recognize who he is. It says once again in Isaiah chapter 6. In Isaiah 6, it was that moment in which Isaiah recognized the glory of God, led him to humble himself and say, woe to me, I cried, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. I am done, God. Oh, you need to get to that moment. If you've never been in that moment of true surrender and humility in the presence of God, you don't know him. You don't know who he is. You just don't, you're still ashamed. You still are making the shame, the sin in your life, in your past, all of that greater than who God is. And so you're sitting back and you're just waiting on everybody else, and you're just waiting for the time to end, and pastor's already at noon and he's still talking on point number 2, and you're just waiting back, and you could care less about worshiping God or singing to him or praying, because you don't recognize who he is. And so if you still have that understanding of him, ask for wisdom, but that wisdom leads you to humility. C.S. Lewis said, true humility is not thinking of yourself less. It's not thinking less of yourself, excuse me. It's a tongue twister. It's not thinking less of yourself. Stop thinking, well, I'm just a sinner. I've done too many things. No, it's thinking of yourself less. So don't think of yourself as someone that is not good enough, is not worthy enough. No, stop thinking about yourself. When you start thinking about God and who he is now in your life and the things he's done for you and what he's done and he continues to do, and he will never let you go, and he's going to be strong there through every weakness. When you start living this way, you start to have this peace, this strength in your life. When we stand in awe of God's goodness, of his greatness, our worship becomes a response to his holiness, not a performance for others, not so other people could see it, not so that you could be louder or more extravagant. Oh, but let there be some true extravagant worship. Think about the woman who saw Jesus. She was a prostitute and she was in shame, but Jesus had forgiven her, and she could care less about what the men were going to say when she went up to Jesus. He was surrounded by all these men. Some of those men probably had slept with her already, but they were judging her because how dare she come into where only men are allowed to come into. Well, she walked in. She could care less. She moved everybody else to the side. She went directly to the feet of Jesus, where we all need to be at. She humbled herself. She brought her little alabaster box that she used to use as perfume in her own life so that men could want to purchase her. But she used that she spent all the money on, and she broke it on Jesus' feet and anointed him in worship. And she began to worship him. And all of a sudden now these tears began to pour on his feet, and she cleansed and dried his feet with her own hair. It was a beautiful, extravagant. Oh yes, they would call her the pick-me. They would call her the extra. They would say that she is just too much, that she is just being too religious or too fanatical. She's too much of a Jesus freak. She could say, I don't care. I love Jesus. You need to get to that moment of worship where it humbles you no matter what. Again, the song that we heard earlier, if the song So Will I, it says, if the stars were made to worship, then so will I. You were created to worship him. This is your creation. The angels were created to serve him. They have a specific purpose, but they don't know forgiveness. They don't know what it means to know that they were against God's will. God still loved them, still forgave them, and now they have a new life and they worship him. They don't understand that. Angels look at you and go, what? This is strange. Why, God? Why do you still love them if they're in sin, if they haven't obeyed you and served you the correct way? And he says, it's because of my son. He died for them. He suffered for them in their place. And so now they are forgiven. They have been set free. They have a new life. They have been delivered from the past. Now they have a life to worship. We were always created to worship him. And again, showing you what I showed you a few weeks ago. These words all remind us of our place in the universe and how small we are in comparison to God's majesty. Yet he invites us to still worship him. Imagine when we are so big about ourselves and there's no humility. You think that the whole world revolves around you, including God. But when we're able to come to God and recognize this is It's not even enough. That dot is too big. And that dot is actually the whole earth. So we're a little dot in the big dot that is the universe. And I think this is just one of the parts that we have satellites big enough to even see this. Who knows what else there is out there? But in the midst of all that, that's who we are. That's you. So be reminded of that. Let that humble you. Let that help you recognize that you are that small dot compared to the hugeness of who God is that created all of this. In verse 10 of Psalms 34, the lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. When we fear the Lord, we're no longer reliant on our own strengths or abilities. We trust in God's power to sustain and uphold us. In a society that prizes self-sufficiency and personal power, fearing God reminds us to humble ourselves and depend on His strength and not just on your own. So just stop saying, I can do this. I got this. I'm more than enough. I got this on my own. I don't need anybody else. Stop trying to just give yourself positive affirmations in front of the mirror. Start saying, I know who God is. I know how awesome He is. I know how mighty He is. And because of who He is, I can do all things through Christ that gives me the strength. Not myself. Not myself. Get to that moment in which you recognize that without Him, we are nothing. We are dirt. We have no life. We are sinners. We are just gross. We have just been empty. There is nothing in us that could try to prove anything to the world. Oh, but in Him, we are His chosen people. We are His royal priesthood. We are royalty. We are sons and daughters. We are co-heirs of what He has given us. We have all of heaven at our disposal. He gives us all of this. And in Proverbs chapter 3, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways submit, humble yourself, and He will make your paths straight. Oswald Chambers, the author, said, remarkable thing about fearing God is that when you fear God, you fear nothing else. This song from Bethel says, I will rest in your promises. My confidence is your faithfulness. I have confidence because He's faithful. I don't have confidence in my bank account. I don't have confidence in who my friends are. I don't have confidence in whatever family you're from or where you live or what you drive. I don't have confidence in my education. I have confidence in His faithfulness because I know that no matter what, He will be there and He will be strong. And He is a rock that no matter what waves may come and push me back and forth and the winds may come and the storms may come, I will stand on that rock and I will rest on your promises, God, because my confidence is your faithfulness. When we looked at the Grand Canyon one more time, the fear of God is composed primarily of delight and awe, moving us towards God. It's like what we feel at the Grand Canyon. We take long trips to go and stand on the edge with our eyes and mouths open wide, overwhelmed with beauty, yet knowing that one little bad step, it will kill us. Moses said that that's the kind of fear that keeps us from sinning against God. Lord, give me wisdom to recognize your glory, to understand who you are truly. If I need to read the Bible more, then I'll do so, but not just so that I can have head knowledge, but because I want to know you personally. I want to know how great you are. If I need to go to church more and pray more and do this so that I can have more wisdom, yes, Lord, that's all I want. I want to know how great you are. I don't want to play games with you anymore, God. I want to know who you are. But Lord, I'm humbling myself because I want to not live as if I'm the center of it all, but I want you to be the center of my life. Not just the priority number one, but the center of my life where all the other priorities have to bow down to who God is. And number 3, fear of God leads us to holiness in worship. This is what begins to make us into who He desires us to be. That even in our worship, even in our prayer, when we seek Him like this, deeper, closer, it's breaking all the other walls down of separation between us and Him. And we're able to enter holy. Peter said this, for it is written, be holy because I am holy. In the early church, holiness was not just a moral concept, but a lifestyle of being set apart for God. The fear of the Lord was central to their calling as Christians. Fear of the Lord is this teachability. It leads you to wisdom. Fear of the Lord, you're not saying, oh, it's all right, God, I know it all. And it's all right, Pastor, I know it all. I don't need this Bible study. I don't need to read this. I don't need to be at church. I'm okay. I'll see you next Easter, Pastor. But fear of the Lord is saying, no, God, I'm that little dot in the whole universe. I don't know anything. Teach me, God. I want to receive, Lord. I want to receive more. That leads to wisdom. Fearing God is something that can be taught. It's something that can be learned. It's not automatic. It requires a posture of humility and openness for being instructed. That's why we come and we say, Pastor Sergio doesn't know it all, but he's just simply reading the Bible to us, and we're going to receive, and we're all together. We're receiving. And we're open-minded. We're not going to say, well, my pastor back in 1982 said this, and so that's how I'm going to live the rest of my life, according to whatever he said. No. We're open to whatever God is revealing us through his word. And if his word is saying it, then we're going to believe it and trust in it. And so we need to be teachable. We need to be taught. We need to learn. It's not going to happen automatically. You're going to say, well, I'm introverted. I don't like to publicly be too much of that. You don't know God personally then. Because he breaks all of that. I've seen some of the most introverted people out there, but in here, oh, they're crazy. Because it's not about me and you and anybody else. It's about the Jesus that they're worshiping. Maverick City again says this in this song, Refiner. This is one of the hardest lyrics. It's strong. But it says, I want to be tried by fire. Purified. You take whatever you desire, Lord. Here's my life. That's holiness. Lord, I just burn away all my selfishness. Burn away all my own desires, all the things that I've made life about. Just burn it all, Jesus. And whatever you desire, purify me, do it in me. Here's my life. This is the heart of real holiness in worship. This is what the Lord desires from us. So much more than a song. It's so much more than you saying, I don't like to sing out loud. This is so much more than just saying, well, I just pray at home. Every opportunity that you have to lift up Jesus' name, and to break through. These next few weeks, we're going to be talking about even the spiritual warfare that happens as we worship. One of the reasons why it feels like you just can't make it here during worship, or you just don't want to, or just it feels awkward and all that, is because there is an enemy that is separating you, that is doing everything possible to keep you from that. That is why the days you have the most arguments with your own kids and family is a Sunday morning. He does everything possible to make it hard for you to get here. And then once you get here, he's telling you don't have to do all that. It's okay. It's the people on the screen. They're doing all that. They probably get paid for all that. Pastor gets paid, so he's obviously over there kneeling down and lifting up his arms and all that. He's just putting up a show for us. Maybe you don't say that, but I bet you have, because I've thought about stuff like that before. That I go somewhere else and I'm saying, they're doing too much. They're being crazy. That's not biblical or anything. No. There's nothing more biblical than us being able to just surrender ourselves fully to him. Let me end with this story. In 1993, a church started, and this church grew and grew. It's a real story, and it grew so much that it was one of the fastest growing churches. But in 1999, the church had grown so much, and the pastor had recognized that they had the best musicians, they had the best lights, the best buildings. They had thousands of people coming every Sunday. And the pastor said, you people are just coming and just sitting there and just receiving nice little life lessons, but you have no idea who God is. You are not worshiping. And all of this, all the best musicians, all the best instruments, all of this, we're done. So he told the church, he told the musicians, take everything off the stage. And so for 6 months, they never sang a song. For 6 months, he said, you're all about songs and you get entertained by this rock band up here. And he says, for 6 months, the church never sang a song. No one was even standing on a microphone. And he said, for 6 months, no one's going to be with a microphone. No one's going to preach this way. He said, just for 6 months, we're going to pray. And every Sunday, we're going to come and we're going to learn to pray and we're going to learn to worship. And it happened every week this way. And during that season, People left. They went and found the church. They had the better musicians, the better singers. They left because they said, oh, we don't even sing songs anymore there. It's boring. The church was like half empty now. But he kept going. Pastor said, no, we still got to keep pushing. We still got to make ourselves change the way we think and what we're expecting from God. And so in the middle of that, the worship leader, his name is Matt Redman, in the middle of that, he wrote this song and he brought it to the pastor. And he said, Pastor, I wrote this song. And he said this. He says, these are the lyrics to the song, Pastor. And Matt Redman said, when the music fades, all is stripped away. And they simply come longing just to bring something that's of worth, that will bless your heart. So I'm coming back to the heart of worship. And it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. That's where that song comes from. Today I'm going to ask if you could stand. And as you receive your communion elements, and as the song plays, go ahead and play